Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Julia Chapman. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Tanvi. It's 12:30 p.m. in London and 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, a looming Israeli offensive in Rafah, more attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure, and an ever closer relationship between Russia and China. But first, the headlines.
A group of Swiss women win landmark climate victory in the European Human Rights Court. The verdict says Bern's failure to meet past greenhouse gas reduction targets had violated some human rights. Israeli Prime Minister says date fixed for Rafah operation. Egyptian, Qatari and US mediators continue to make efforts for a ceasefire at the talks in Cairo. Rhetoric, reason and razzmatazz come to the fore as campaigning picks up pace for the first phase of India's parliamentary elections on April 19th. And gold shines in a record rally run globally. India's Nifty and Sensex hit fresh record highs. So, in a landmark judgment on a climate change case, a group of older Swiss women have won the first ever case in the European Court of Human Rights. The Swiss women had argued that their government's inaction to tackle climate change had put them at a risk of dying due to heat waves. The ECHR noted that the Switzerland government had not done enough to combat climate change and had violated some of their human rights. The court also underscored the government's failure to meet its greenhouse gas emission targets. The ruling will now force Switzerland to take greater action on climate goals. The court, however, dismissed two similar cases brought by 6 Portuguese youth and a former French mayor against their governments.
So, well, shocked, positively shocked, so happy, because we could do something. We could do something. We could contribute to the future, to a better future for our children.
The Supreme Court of India had given a similar verdict recently, saying the right against climate change is a distinct fundamental and human right. Observing how climate change is increasing year by year, the court underscored the need to recognize this right as a distinct one, as vulnerable species face several challenges because of pollution, climate change, predators and invasive species. The Supreme Court had said that Articles 14, that is equality before law and the equal protection of laws, and Article 21, guaranteeing the right to life and personal liberty of the Indian Constitution, are important sources of this right. The court has constituted an expert committee which will submit a report on or before July 31st, 2024 in this matter. Now, the past 10 months have seen monthly temperature records broken, with the most recent one being in March being the warmest on record. The Climate Change Monitoring Service of the European Union reports that when compared to the equivalent month in prior years, each of the last 10 months has been the hottest on record worldwide. The 12 months ending with March also ranked as the planet's hottest ever recorded 12-month period. From April 2023 to March 2024, the global average temperature was 1.58 degrees Celsius above the average in 1850 to 1900 pre-industrial period. On to West Asia now. Israel has said that it has circled a date in the calendar for the Rafah operation, although US says it has not been briefed on the matter. My colleague Julia Chapman is in London. She gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Julia, tough road ahead for both parties?
That's right. Despite pressure not to send troops into Rafah, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the date is set for a ground offensive there, although he hasn't made that date public. It comes as no progress has been made yet at the ongoing talks on a ceasefire in Cairo. After rejecting Israel's earlier proposal, Hamas now says that a new proposal has again failed to address Palestinian demands.
I received a detailed report on the talks in Cairo. We are constantly working to achieve our goals. First and foremost, the release of all our hostages and achieving a complete victory over Hamas. This victory requires entry into Rafah and the elimination of the terrorist battalions there. It will happen. There is a date.
Talks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that a date has been set for entry into Rafah and the elimination of terrorist battalions.
I received a detailed report on the talks in Cairo. We are constantly working to achieve our goals. First and foremost, the release of all our hostages and achieving a complete victory over Hamas. This victory requires entry into Rafah and the elimination of the terrorist battalions there. It will happen. There is a date.
Rafah, bordering Egypt, is Gaza's last refuge for displaced Palestinians. Over 1.3 million people have taken shelter in Rafah as the conflict lingers on. Hamas on Tuesday rejected Israel's fresh ceasefire proposal, saying that it does not meet any of the demands of the Palestinians. However, added it would study the proposal further. Israel and Hamas sent teams to Egypt on Sunday for talks that included Qatari and Egyptian mediators, as well as CIA Director William Burns. Reacting to Israel's announcement on Rafah, United States said it has not been briefed about the same. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller told reporters at a regular news briefing that Washington does not want to see a full-scale Rafah operation. Bureau Report, DD India.
With more on this, DD India's Alex Kadier sent us this report from Tel Aviv.
Now, we know from the last conversation last week between the US and Israeli officials in Washington, that virtual call, I should say, that took place, that the United States thinks that the evacuation of civilians in Rafah, we know that more than 1 million Palestinians from Gaza have sought refuge there because it had been previously designated a safe area by the IDF. That evacuation of civilians has to happen according to the United States. Israel has also said it is putting plans in place to evacuate those civilians. Now, the Israeli officials in that meeting said the evacuation will take 4 weeks. The US officials said it will take 4 months. Now, speaking to Israeli military sources just in the last couple of days, they think the timeline will be somewhere in the middle, somewhere around 2 to 3 months to evacuate those 1 million people. But the real question is, where can they go? We know that the evacuation of Israeli troops, or the withdrawal of Israeli troops from central Gaza in the last 48 hours has meant some people are returning to Khan Yunis in the middle of the Gaza Strip. But Khan Yunis is all but destroyed, and people say they can't find their homes because their street simply doesn't exist anymore. One woman saying that she cannot reach her apartment because the staircase has been completely destroyed as well. So clearly that operation in Rafah looming. It will be a few months perhaps before it begins, but again, a lot of pressure from the US to make sure that if it does happen, harm to civilians has to be minimized.
The United Nations Security Council is considering an application for the Palestinian Authority to become a full member of the UN. The proposal was put forward by Malta, which holds the rotating presidency of the Security Council this month. It received no initial objections, and members will now deliberate for the next month. Palestine is a non-member observer state, which would require at least 9 votes of support and no vetoes to become a full member. Restating India's position on the war in Gaza, India's ambassador to the UN, Ruchira Kamboj, condemned the October 7th attack on Israel. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly, she reaffirmed India's support for a two-state solution.
India's position on the conflict has been clearly articulated on more than one occasion by our leadership. There are 4 key points here. 1. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has led to a large-scale loss of civilian lives, especially women and children. The resulting humanitarian crisis is simply unacceptable. 2. The terror attacks on Israel on 7 October were shocking, and they deserve our unequivocal condemnation. There can be no justification for terrorism and hostage-taking. India has a long-standing and uncompromising position against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and we demand the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. 3. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire. It is imperative that humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza be scaled up immediately in order to avert a further deterioration in the situation. 4. My leadership has repeatedly emphasized that only a two-state solution, achieved through direct and meaningful negotiations between both sides on final status issues, will deliver an enduring peace.
Ukraine says its air defense system brought down 20 drones launched by Russia overnight. Officials say 7 regions of Ukraine were targeted in the attack, with debris damaging power lines in the southern Odessa region. In recent weeks, Russia has intensified its assaults on Ukraine's power sector, focusing on energy-generating facilities and vital infrastructure. Russia and China have agreed to begin a dialogue on deepening security in the Eurasian region. The announcement comes as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held talks in Beijing on Tuesday with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. At a press conference, Mr. Lavrov said there is a need to establish Eurasian security, and both Russia and China have decided to commence dialogue in that area. Lavrov also stated both countries will continue to uphold their cooperation in counter-terrorism efforts. That's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Julia, for all those updates. Julia Chapman joining us from London. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida arrived in Washington on Monday, becoming the first Japanese leader to make a state visit to the United States in 9 years. During his visit, Kishida will hold a bilateral summit with US President Joe Biden. He will also address a joint meeting of Congress on Thursday. Kishida will be the second Japanese leader to address the joint meeting of Congress after his predecessor Shinzo Abe, who gave his speech in 2015. Kishida will also join a first-ever summit of the US, Japanese and Philippine leaders in Washington this week. DD India's Laura Westbrook has more from Hong Kong.
Yes, the US says this is all about strengthening ties with Japan and showcasing Japan's global leadership role. The US and Japan are also expected to announce the biggest upgrade in their military alliance since 1960. The US is expected to restructure its military command in Japan. The US has some 50,000 troops in Japan. And being a state visit, there will also be a state dinner of around 200 guests. And that will also give a chance for Kishida to boost his popularity at home. As you mentioned, he will be addressing Congress, being the first leader to do so since 2015. And that really is going to be a chance for him to address both sides of the aisle ahead of a US presidential election in November. He's likely to talk about how Japan is a global partner of the US and that Japan is willing to take a bigger role in issues like defense, security, and space. And he's expected to also go to North Carolina, where he will be visiting some Japanese countries there and trying to drum up some investment. So a very busy trip. Well, as I said, the big focus is security and defense. They will be announcing that big upgrade to the security alliance since 1960, and that is all around looking at the growing, expanding influence of China in the Indo-Pacific region. And with the Philippines also joining this trilateral summit on Thursday, that also is showing that the focus of these countries is really trying to combat what they see as an expanding influence of China in the region.
Staying in the region, a rare total solar eclipse carved a path across North America, traveling across Mexico, the US and into Canada. Some locations experienced nearly 4.5 minutes of totality when the moon completely eclipses the sun, bringing a disquieting darkness to the day. Our correspondent Tony Waterman has more from Austin, Texas, where the cloudy skies couldn't dampen the festive mood.
It was an absolute nail-biter down to the final moments. The moon's slow eclipse of the sun mostly obscured by thick clouds. But then, at the most crucial moment, a brief breakthrough. The golden ring of the total solar eclipse visible in the sky. Wow. Austin was enveloped in darkness for nearly 2 minutes.
It's like turning the light on and off quickly, so yeah, it still feels like I'm in a dream. Literally, like right now, did I just wake up from something? So it's wonderful.
I think it was just kind of a spiritual thing, you know, that it's not science, I know, but also it's, you know, the whole universe, everything. So I thought it was great.
This was really a once-in-a-lifetime experience for many of the people here, because the last time there was a total solar eclipse in Austin was over 600 years ago, and the next one is not expected for another 300.
The rarity of the event attracting solar enthusiasts from around the world, including this family from Chile. It's their 4th eclipse, but the experience still brings the mother to tears.
Yeah, she's very grateful to the universe and God about having the chance to witness this with my dad and me.
Some solar enthusiasts opted for a truly unique experience.
We're going to make a full left turn.
Tracking the path of totality 30,000 feet in the air.
So pretty!
One couple even getting engaged mid-flight. Their excitement still palpable back on Earth.
I could never come up with anything else so special to propose to her, and I wanted it to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So it just seemed like perfect to combine it.
There is a total solar eclipse somewhere on Earth about every 18 months, but rarely does it carve a path along a long, continuous stretch of land, giving scientists the opportunity to do research they wouldn't normally be able to do.
The total solar eclipse has historically been an incredible time for big leaps forward in astronomical research, not only studying the sun itself, but even there was a historic expedition to verify Einstein's theory of relativity soon after he predicted it using the total solar eclipse.
The eclipse is also a poignant reminder of our small place in the universe, literally standing in the shadow of the moon. A brief but wondrous experience. Tony Waterman in Austin reporting for DD India.
Indeed, the world watched in wonder the total solar eclipse. Still to come on DD India Global. An underwater drone is using artificial intelligence to study the widespread mass coral bleaching at the Great Barrier Reef. And artists from Turkmenistan and Tajikistan celebrate their cultural and heritage ties.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to the chair at the bull run in the Indian stock markets now. The Indian stock markets achieved another milestone on Tuesday. For the first time, the Bombay Stock Exchange BSE Sensex hit the 75,000 mark. Both the frontline indices traded at record high levels in intraday trade. on April 9th, with the Nifty 50 surging above the 22,700 level. With profit taking a weight on the market, both the indices ended marginally lower on Tuesday. Meanwhile, gold prices have extended their record rally run, hitting highs in both global and domestic markets. Spot gold soared to $2,344 per ounce earlier in the session, while US gold futures climbed to $2,361. In India, gold prices skyrocketed to 71,000 rupees per 10 grams for the first time. And now we get you the latest on the run-up to the world's largest democratic elections in India. So with polling just over 10 days away for the first phase of India's general elections, political parties are in full campaigning mode and are intensifying their efforts to secure victory in the upcoming elections. Prime Minister and senior BJP leader Narendra Modi held a public meeting in North India's Pilibhit. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended Navratri greetings and slammed the India alliance, disrespecting the belief of the entire nation.
आज नवरात्रि के पहले दिन, शक्ति की पूजा के पहले दिन, मैं देश को ये भी याद दिला रहा हूं कि कैसे इंडी गठबंधन ने शक्ति को खत्म करने की सौगंध खाई है। आज देश भर में जिस शक्ति की पूजा हो रही है, उस शक्ति का कांग्रेस ने घोर अपमान किया है। जिस शक्ति के आगे हम शीश झुकाते हैं, उस शक्ति को उखाड़ फेंकने की बात ये कांग्रेस के नेता कर रहे हैं। शक्ति का कोई भी उपासक इंडी गठबंधन को इस अपमान के लिए माफ नहीं करेगा।
Later in the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a public rally in central India's Balaghat, where he said that those who have joined politics to fill their coffers should not give threats to him. PM Modi will also conduct a roadshow in South India's Chennai and address a public meeting in Vellore Lok Sabha constituency later in the day. Meanwhile, India's Home Minister and senior BJP leader Amit Shah held a public rally in Assam on Tuesday. Addressing the gathering, he said that people have two options in front of them. One is the India Alliance headed by Rahul Gandhi. The other, Bharatiya Janata Party-led NDA under the remarkable leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh is also witnessing hectic political events in the run-up to the polls. While addressing a gathering at a public rally in Namsai on Tuesday, senior BJP leader and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh raised concerns regarding China's recent actions. Singh made it clear that any attempt to undermine India's dignity or sovereignty would be met with a firm response. Mahavikas Aghadi, the opposition coalition in Maharashtra, announced its seat-sharing arrangement on Tuesday for the upcoming general elections. At a press conference in Mumbai, Nationalist Congress Party Chief Sharad Pawar, Shiv Sena head Uddhav Thackeray and State Congress President Nana Patole announced the poll pact for the 48 parliamentary seats in Maharashtra. As per the pact, the Shiv Sena Uddhav faction will contest elections on 21 Lok Sabha seats, the Congress on 17 and Sharad Pawar's NCP party on 10 seats in the state. The Lok Sabha polls will be held in 5 phases in Maharashtra from April 19th to May 20th. And next we take a look at what else is happening around the world. Artists of Turkmenistan and Tajikistan recently celebrated their culture and heritage together. The Days of Culture of Turkmenistan event was held in Tajikistan. The concert became a striking example of successful cultural cooperation and an important factor in the development and expansion of multifaceted ties for the benefit of the people of both countries. The famous baklava dessert of Gaziantep city of Turkey has become the most sought-after sweet for Eid al-Fitr, also known as the Feast of Sweets or Ramadan Bayram, a 3-day celebration at the end of Ramadan. Also known as Antep baklava, the production of Gaziantep's registered and geographically indicated flavor multiplies before the Eid al-Fitr. An underwater drone Hydrus is using artificial intelligence to help the Australian Institute of Marine Science to build 3D maps and survey the Great Barrier Reef. Climate change has caused a widespread mass coral bleaching event across the huge structure. And now let's bring you back to India, where tourists as well as locals are flocking to the country's largest tulip garden in northern Kashmir to admire the newly bloomed flowers. This renowned destination attracts crowds during the spring season from mid-March to late April. The garden has earned recognition from the World Book of Records, London, as the first of its kind in Asia. So with those beautiful Kashmir tulips, we wind up this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show, live from Washington, D.C. at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.